Welcome to Untying Knots, Minds and Souls Untethered with Perry Clark. This program looks at mental health from unique perspectives and shows you how to manage your life by finding the knots that help you and stay away from the ones that could be a disadvantage. Now, here is your host, Perry Clark.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Untying Knots, Minds and Souls Untethered. So I want to start with a disclaimer that I want to remind you that this is not a substitute for therapy. This is for educational and entertainment purposes, and that you should definitely seek out therapy help with someone within your area to be able to work on your unique issues. And if you're interested, who we're going to be talking to today might be another option too, depending on where you are. So I'm going to be up front. We're recording this in November, and I figured this is going to be the first recording for 2022. So hello to everybody in 2022. I hope you've had a good holiday and that you're going to be starting this new year off with growth and change. So today we're going to be talking with a therapist that I met at a group consultation meeting here. Brilliant man who has leveraged not just his ability as a therapist, but his ability to build businesses as well to create not one, but two other programs designed to help with mental health. One of those especially, which I know we're going to be talking about today, is for Black male executives. So today I'm pleased to introduce you to Jewel Love. I don't know where Lewis came from. MFT. So Jewel, welcome to Untying Knots.
Thank you. I appreciate it, and glad to be here.
Not a problem. So how did you get started in all of this?
Absolutely. Well, in college, I was really woken up to racial injustices in the United States. Now, of course, I knew about the history of slavery and anti-Black racism in the United States. I've seen, roots and things like that, and read a little bit about it. However, living in the San Francisco Bay Area, very multicultural atmosphere, in a somewhat sheltered Buddhist upbringing and community, I wasn't so much privy to the whole history and how it kind of had been infused throughout American culture and institutions up until I went to college and started learning about the history that was there. And it very much went against my understanding and indoctrination of the United States being a both free and fair society from its inception. So I started learning and saying, wow, there's this whole other worldview and viewpoints in reality. And I decided to major in Black studies. And learning about it, I became very enraged. Healthy response, I'd say proper response to learning about this information, and became a student activist within the Black community and was successful in many ways that activists can be. However, I noticed that even in my activism success, there was this kind of a black hole inside of me that just could not become full through this activism work. So the more work I did, the more upset I felt. It was this odd paradox that I was actually working to solve issues and problems. And as I, in fact, was able to, stumble across or come across some effective solutions, I actually felt worse inside. And the methods I was using to get these results oftentimes damaged and broke relationships around me. So this very interesting, in some ways contradictory experience that I was having that ultimately was unsatisfying to me. And I had to look at those results, the internal results, not just the external ones. And with that being the case, I decided to leave activism behind. So I graduated, Black Studies major, and went into the world on more of a spiritual quest, a spiritual journey, where I started studying world religions. So I turned to the more of a spiritual religious path kind of looking for answers of both how I could make an impact and simultaneously have a better lived experience internally. Studied many world religions, learned a lot from them, and yet what was missing for me was something personalized as opposed to learning about somebody else's journey or
Hmm.
be it a priest or 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 things of this in their path.
We
There was
lost you there a
something.
second. So, could you say that again? We had a little disruption in the signal.
Oh, sure. As opposed to studying a priest or a prophet's path and mimicking what they had
Hmm.
done, uh, there was something I think more personalized that I was looking for because although I'm not a priest or a prophet, I'm having
Hmm.
my own kind of spiritual unfolding here and
Hmm.
needing a narrative that speaks more squarely to my own experience. Around my, I'd say 26th, 27th year, began questioning my sexuality, which had been heterosexual up until that point. And
Hmm.
that was something that really walked me to the edge of my social circles and familial circles at that time, as far as conversations that I could have with them that they really could understand. And that is what then opened the doorway to me for psychotherapy. That's when I
Hmm.
started getting the
Hmm.
you need to go to therapy conversation.
Uh-huh.
We can't help with this topic
Hmm.
to provide you with any clarity. You need it. Those kind of conversations started coming my way.
Right.
I did. And I found a gay-centered Jungian psychologist in West Hollywood. His name is Dr. Donald Kilhefner, and he was, I guess you say is or was, a pioneer in as far as gay community psychotherapy is concerned,
Hmm.
um, and helped to found the LGBTQ plus center in West Hollywood, and also was one of the founding members or pioneers in the Radical Fairies
Hmm.
movement slash organization um, at the time. And so this was really his contribution and specialty alongside something I later learned about called the men's movement, and I didn't
Hmm.
know what this was about. So, started meeting with Don. It was very scary for me at first because I didn't know psychotherapy. I didn't know psychology. I didn't know. I didn't know if I was getting set up for like to be in a relationship with this man. I didn't know what. I didn't know what was going on.
Hmm.
I just got a solid recommendation to go see him from somebody I deeply trusted.
Hmm.
And I was out of answers. So I said yes and did it up. And I remember walking into the office and there's two or three things that I immediately remember seeing when walking into the office. One was two men hugging butt naked in the middle of a river.
Hmm.
I was like, okay, that's interesting.
This was a
And then
picture on
the
the wall.
picture on the wall. And the second thing was a picture of Malcolm X.
Hmm.
I said, wow. And so the level of trust for me in seeing a picture of Malcolm X, and he's a white therapist,
Hmm.
I said, he gets it. This dude definitely gets it. On some level, I can talk to this guy.
Hmm.
So for the next 2.5 years, I do talk to him and have an absolutely transformative experience working with him and really learning, grasping, and then internalizing principles of psychotherapeutic that lead to psychotherapeutic change,
Hmm.
psychological transformation.
Hmm.
So I was able to explore my sexuality, sexual orientation, even gender through conversations with him, which was
Hmm.
really very liberating for me, just to explore this part of, I'd say myself, but also society, really, simultaneously. And as Carl Jung would talk about, the psychological shadow being parts of ourselves that we hide, repress, and deny. So just kind of shining a conscious light on it was very helpful for me. Ultimately, I found it most comfortable to reside in heterosexual sexual orientation. But for me to be able to explore, I'd say that side of myself was just very liberating to know, like, what's there? What's this kind of experience like for me? And so I don't have to stay up late nights and wonder and curious. I sleep like a rock now because I know it's behind
you're centered in yourself.
Centered in myself. I know it's behind door 1, 2, and 3 at this point. For me anyway. And so that was just very, I say, affirming, kind of my whole self to be able to explore. And yet there was something else that was even more of what I'd say a stumbled upon surprise for me, which was around this whole men's movement. And some of the things I learned there around men exploring and being able to express themselves or ourselves emotionally with vulnerability, and around psychological vulnerability with another man. And so that was a massive piece for me. And to be able to explore that and weave that into my identity and psychological sense of wholeness was really a homecoming for me. And it had me then no longer questioning, am I a man because I have feelings, because I have vulnerable aspects? No, I certainly am. And it's just a next step or dimension in my progression in maturing as a man, and centering that in this whole men's movement where men were coming together and talking about their feelings and being vulnerable, and that being different than the defined kind of Marlboro man, stiff upper lip, not showing vulnerability that on some level I had identified with up until that point. So just a phenomenal healing, transformational experience. And then, I remember sitting across from my therapist and saying, wait, you get paid to have these deep conversations with people all day? I'm used to selling cars and trying to, being a teacher for kids, and these other jobs are fine, but this is profound work. And you just get to sit in that comfortable looking chair and just talk about deep stuff all day, and people just pay you every time you do it. And he's like, yeah. I'm like, this is it. This is
your next step.
It's my next step. And it's not only who I am in the world, it's how I am in the world. And that was the great revelation and confirmation for me, that all the seeking and the searching and things of this nature that for me had really started, kind of kicked off in awareness in college, I had found in this profession. And it was a way of being that was a confirmation for who I am. And that was the homecoming. And he said, well, you could do it too. And so I started exploring psychology schools to get my master's, and I did, and ultimately ended up getting my marriage and family therapist license at the end of this entire process. And starting a business specifically for Black men, so bring back the Malcolm X and the activism kind of pieces, but weaving in with the gem or the jewel, my own namesake, that I found around psychology and psychotherapy in this way of being. I can't stress that enough, being so satisfactory and fulfilling, even in a world that has the history I spoke of before, and some, if not many, of the present factors still lingering on and active today.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the element of freedom that I was able to find, and now I'm able to really guide others in my one-on-one private practice, and then we'll get to the whole group practice and
Right.
expansion and things of that later. But yeah, so that's really been the full story there, the fullish or download of how I got on this path, and it really came about for me.
Which just speaks very much to some of the deeper issues we have in our society about how men are normalized, how it is for us to have this connection. The elements that are missing in that aspect of our deeper development as beings, which obviously we hear many women complain about. Why doesn't he connect? Why can't he speak to his feelings? Why can't he be vulnerable to us? It's like, how many different things are going on in this world that are telling us not to be that? Or shoving it deeper and down because we've also been seen as less than for being connected to that, which that is an integral part of all humans, and especially men, and has influenced so many of the other problems we're talking about as well, as in our culture and in dealing with racism and dealing with narcissism as well.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. All of those are in part of this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So you started your business, which is another one of those things of this. We sit with the struggle of being men, is that we're either expected to be followers working in the factory or being the businessman. And if we're a businessman, we're supposed to be cold-hearted.
Okay, I hear you.
Yeah. And yet to also do the work we do as therapists and run business, we can't live that way. We can't be cold-hearted about the business and be not in touch with having these deep, profound conversations with the people who are coming to us and bearing their vulnerability, bearing their pain, or looking for that other perspective to help them grow.
I would agree.
Yeah. So you moved into private practice, working as a therapist. Then what sparked this other area, this group practice, this at the time I knew it as the Golden Rhinos?
You know, it's interesting, absolutely, and I'm glad you brought this mythological element, which stems back to my own time and experience, because my initial psychologist was a Jungian, so there's a lot of conversations around symbolism, dream work, things of that nature. What did it signify? And so I've carried that with me, and I look for those things as well because I know there's power in them. So as far as the group practice was concerned, I've had a life that's worked in cycles. And it typically starts off when I enter into a phase of life or a particular institution where most people start, and that's on the bottom of the institution, and you got to kind of work your way up and figure things out. But I usually struggle in those initial points of finding, like really where I belong, understanding the system and structure. And so I usually do a few years of study. And then as I reach a level of seniority, be it, high school or college, or now in this phase of adulthood, if you will, and moving into my middle years as an adult, and figuring things out here, is what's broken and what's a solution. What's broken, what's a potential solution on a social, institutional level. And so when I was in high school, there was an issue of freshmen coming in feeling disconnected. So when I became a senior, I started a mentorship program that combined seniors and freshmen, and it worked great. When I was in UC Santa Barbara, as far as undergrad, the feeling of Black students feeling disconnected from university life, PYWs, largely white institutions throughout the UC system. A lot of Asian students as well, but just primarily and culturally, majority white institutions on aggregate. and then starting up an organization called the University of California African Black Coalition that united all the ASUs and BSUs throughout California, providing a sense of unity and camaraderie. And these were events that just very much exploded in terms of feeling of belonging and connection for Black students. So again, institutional, and then the universities are the ones that pay for it, helps with retention, things of that nature. And then now, one of the places was around Black men in corporate America. Similar dynamic is in college of Black men feeling unseen, unheard, unvalued. And so in this one-on-one space, offering them the tools and the experiences for them to get what's not had in the workplace, to be that a support, an optimizer, so they can move back into their work, or starting their own entrepreneurial pursuits in a ways that launches them further in toward greater success and wholeness and inner peace inside. And then seeing just this greater opportunity. I can't be the one to provide services to all these Black men. In fact, I'm not the only one out here doing this work. And there's a lot of other therapists, Black men, that want to be doing this work in corporate or with corporate clients, men that work in corporate environments and don't know how to necessarily reach these men. So the idea of Black executive men as a national, really international organization that provides coaching for men, Black men in the corporate environment worldwide, but also psychotherapy services as well, is what has more recently been put on the table. And we've started hiring and brought on a number of coaches. Are going to be looking into the regulation to expand psychotherapy services on at least now a national basis, and reaching out to Fortune 500 companies themselves and doing presentations to let these men know about our services, provide them some value, provide a channel for them to get one-on-one services, as well as what's really on the table, to the point where we're looking at getting 1,000 client sessions a week, which is significant for the Black men in corporate America demographic and population. So that's where we're leaning into. The men that we have on staff, as far as our speakers, national speaking director, other coaching staff, are very much excited about this mission that we're now on and the opportunity to impact Black men's lives just across the board, across the corporate sector. Just a very exciting time and exciting movement.
Good. So could you tell us a bit more about what Black male executives are experiencing that your services are going to be providing? Because again, there's this aspect of what is the actual image people have is the reality versus this perceived thought about what it means to be a Black executive.
The number one word that comes to mind is lonely. These men are lonely. And it's not just that they're isolated, because they're definitely isolated as well, but there's a sense of loneliness that comes along with it. So oftentimes these guys have been, so we talk about lonely, is the only, this may be the only Black kid in their elementary or junior high or high school or college or company currently or department or highly likely level of seniority. Now, I got to say, for Black executive men, that is the name of our business. However, our clients are not necessarily all executives. We have a lot of middle manager types that come in as well. As you know, corporations are these, especially F500, huge. We're talking, let's say 80,000, 100,000. Microsoft has 180,000 employees worldwide. So there's a lot of room in that middle management sector for employees to really carry out their entire careers. And so many of the guys that we work with, some are in the C-suite, the bulk are in middle management. However, Black executive men speaks to an aspirational identity of our clients. And yet what they're experiencing, whether they're on the highest echelon or in that middle echelon, it's still a lot of similarities and it's dealing with racial microaggressions in the workplace, or aggressions that aren't necessarily micro for that matter,
Right.
and having to keep themselves composed.
Mm-hmm.
The the experience or philosophy of having to work twice as hard for half as much. It's something that they're continuously experiencing, having to down. Blackness is along with that as far as experiences.
You're breaking up a
Celebrate.
little. You're breaking up a little. Say that again, please.
Oh, sure. So, as far as these men being transparent on their views on race or racism, oftentimes are things they have to walk delicately,
Mm-hmm.
as far as sharing them or not, and
Mm-hmm.
having their coworkers or colleagues agree or disagree could, in fact, impact their employment or their rapport and comfort in the company. So
Mm-hmm.
these are some of the elements which they're constantly taking into account that take
Mm-hmm.
mental and emotional energy as they need to, in some ways, manage their other employees or colleagues from a racialized standpoint, which some of their white colleagues may or may not have to do.
All righty. So I think that's a good place for us to take a break here. We're going to be coming back and continue our talk with Jewel Love and talking on black male executives and dealing with just being in that environment. So stay tuned here on Untying Knots, Minds and Souls Untethered.
Our lives and the world around us can get messy and frustrating. Untangle and Grow Counseling's focus is to untangle that mess and make sense of it so you have a good foundation to build and grow from. Visit us on the web at untangleandgrowcounseling.com. Perry Clark offers individual psychotherapy, couples and family therapy, and adolescence therapy from a variety of coping materials and resources. Visit untangleandgrowcounseling.com for more information. You are listening to Untying Knots, Minds and Souls Untethered. If you have a question or comment about our podcast, send an email to pclark@untyingknotspodcast.com. That's pclark@untyingknotspodcast.com. And now, back to the program.
Welcome back to Untying Knots, Minds and Souls Untethered. I'm Perry Clark, licensed marriage and family therapist, and I'm here with Jewel Love, licensed marriage and family therapist, and also the founder and CEO of the Black Male Executive Program. So, Jewel, you're just talking about, before we went to break, about how many Black executives feel alone in their field, in their industry, and many of them, whether they're in the executive suite or in middle management, are struggling to be able to speak about their presence without necessarily alienating their workforce and those that they work with, which then makes the job untenable. So where would you like to go further from there in talking about this experience, and especially one of those experiences informing a practice around this is also dealing, I know, with the entrepreneurial standpoint. So please.
Yeah, and it's there's a connection there in that as the organization builds out and grows and we look for funding, seed funding in order to really expand and go to market as we'd like to do, there's a similarity with many of our clients who are doing similar things and having similar discussions around marketing and branding and raising money and investors and board members and stock prices and things of this nature. It's very much lock and step with our clientele as well. So it's pouring right back into being able to guide our clients who are on many times similar journeys as we as an organization walk down this path. That knowledge and now institutional knowledge that we're gathering and gaining, it's actually supporting client success as well. So it's just a very inspirational part of our journey, knowing that the steps that we're taking are pouring right back into clinical outcomes and coaching outcomes for our clients, which is just good to be able to be in this type of creative space when it comes to the worlds of Black culture, the corporate environment, male identity formation, and psychotherapeutic healing and empowerment at the same time. So that really is the kind of forefront and the edge. Now, something I will say that makes Black mental health, and I think it's wonderful that the APA just came out with a fairly lengthy apology, and significant one, around their role in forwarding white supremacy. Their words, not mine.
And just for those who don't know, APA is the American Psychological Association.
Absolutely. And for them to have this admission in long form, as far as how they detail the association's participation and promotion of white supremacist ideologies in the field of psychology, it's a massive admission that I think is going to be very helpful as far as bringing in more people of color to the conversation and forwarding healing modalities and organizations like Black Executive Men and others that are serving quote unquote minority populations. And the thing that I want to contribute now that they've shared that is that we do therapy a little differently. It ain't all the same. And so some of the, even on the clinical pieces that I'd like to share is that there's three pieces that come to mind. So that may be different than traditional quote unquote psychotherapy. So the first one is going to be around transparency and self-disclosure. There can be, what I've noticed in the years of supervision that I've gotten around on this topic, that in I guess we could call it Black mental health, there's kind of an opportunity or a leaning into a bit more around transparency and self-disclosure that I noticed, I can say from my clients, that they find very welcoming and helpful in order to build a level of trust and rapport. They want to know more about a bit around my life. And I'm going to share the reason why.
Please do.
Because this is not removed of Black community nor culture. And when I'm talking about Black community or culture, I'm not talking about two Black folks that know each other necessarily. I'm talking about Black folks that have a common agreement, narratives.
Say again, we got hit with some lag there.
I'm sorry about that.
No, it's not your fault. It's the internet.
It's the internet.
Yeah, we got some lag. So could you say that again, please?
Sure. So I'm talking about agreement around cultural narratives, certain values. Now, I'm not saying there's not diversity in there as well, but there's some generalities in there that are being brought to the table when the conversation has. That we have some kind of an accord starting from that place. And so there's, it's not just two random kind of strangers getting together for a conversation as it may seem is in traditional psychotherapy, and there's all this anonymity. No, there's already understanding coming to the table around that certain, be it mannerisms or foods or historical narratives, are already there in place. And that conversation had already been on some level understood and on some level agreed upon before the conversation even began. So there's already other levels of connection that are being brought into the conversation.
The shorthand.
and provide that level of comfort in what can be a very vulnerable conversation. So even sharing aspects of that around Black culture, around have you seen this that's happened, or do you know about this that's happened? You say, oh yeah, I've definitely seen it or heard it, or I'm up on it, or oh yeah, I watched it, or I heard the new album release, or this artist or actor or politician. And we can talk about those things that would be drawn in from one's personal life of what a therapist may be doing or exploring personally, things of that nature. So that's one of the pieces of the puzzle. So I'd find there to be a bit more transparency and self-disclosure in quote unquote Black mental health. That's helpful for client outcomes and rapport building. Number two is, and this probably is just for me, maybe personally, but there may be a carryover, and it's a level of passion and excitement. I'm bringing a level of passion and excitement that's of who I am to the table that seems to have a rapport and a relatability with my clients. Now, as I respect, this may not be an element in Black cultural dynamics specifically, and it may be just more personally how I orient to the craft and what I bring to the table. But I can say there's a level of reception and receptivity to being able to elevate, to bring a level of energy, a level of I'm just going to say it very regularly. Like, I get loud in my set. I get direct. I can get loud. I can get quiet. The emotional tone and range that I can express as a therapist and a coach for that matter seems to be both welcomed and appreciated and resonated with in my clientele. As far as Black mental health is concerned, I can't necessarily say is always going to be received to the same degree in other places. It's possible that it could be. So I just can't relegate it solely or relate it solely to Black culture, but that is an element that can possibly find a warm reception within Black mental health that may be off-putting or viewed as different in other settings.
Well, but what you're just talking about is very much what you're also talking about with the Black executive, middle, and high level, is that warmth, that element of who they are has to get, just to survive in that, whether it's in the school environment or the work environment, often has to get suppressed.
It does.
And to finally be in a place where they don't have to have that suppression is liberating. I had a client during the pandemic this last year who, as he put it, it's nice not having the shorthand. It's that nice in that aspect that he could just open up while he was working with me. And he was also a Black man, he was also a gay man, that he wasn't finding in the other places that he was able to work in. So, you're hitting on it, and it's part of us. And this is also something that is not going to be covered in our classes. This is not something that's going to be covered in our practical training.
We're going to have to talk about it now. So, I want to share the third piece, but then kind of bounce back to this piece. Is now this is where I bump up against our profession. And this is something I've really thought about for some time, and I've gotten consultation on and coaching on, and I know we have our legal and ethical pieces involved here, and yet this is something there's a bit of struggle here, but there's also a bit of knowing here, and it's the community element. So there is an individual identity, but also a communal collective identity. And when we talk about, and there's this piece around representation matters in the Black community. That's to see a Black leader that's already stepped ahead and done it really opens the door psychologically for other Black folks to say, hey, I could do it too. The path is clear. I can achieve this as well.
Mm-hmm.
And to not see somebody black up there on that place and at that level of it can create a psychological barrier that, hey, that's not for me. And we just go back to a history of segregation where those elements were literally put in place for so long. So there's a
Well,
good.
I would also add to that when we get, and I know this is also written in Joy DeGroot's book, Post Traumatic Slave Syndrome, when we're also talking about black leaders who have gotten there and then closed the door behind them as well.
Absolutely. Yep.
Or they don't show they have the competence for the job, and they're going to do everything they can to protect that job, which also disrupts the communal connection as well.
Absolutely. And these are, I think, the intricacies that come with these levels of seniority and being black, and then not wanting to be seen as being favorable to other black people that may be coming up behind. And then, and then what if that, let's say you bring on somebody that's black as well, and they don't knock it out of the park. And then how does that reflect on other black people? Are they going to hire somebody? There's all this, it's so rich and so dynamic, and it's so typically often, maybe not thoroughly, but the dynamics are at least, I say, recognized and understood. Whether it's helpful or not, we're able to recognize the dynamics at play where others may not be fully aware of all that's going on from a cultural standpoint. And so all of this jockeying and the political aspects that go along with business and race are all taking place for black folks in corporate America to one degree or another. And so the last piece I wanted to share is actually it's the communal piece, and it's having clients that are being able to be referred within a network. Now I'm going to explain what this is and why this is powerful. Let's say, because if we hark back all the way to the beginning of this talked about what is the number one problem and concern. Loneliness. Okay, not just the isolation, but the loneliness involved. Is being alone, but feeling as though they cannot connect with another. And in putting one black male, let's just say middle manager, in connection with another that may have some insight on how, because they've overcome that issue or problem, and being tuned, in touch, and in line with confidentiality laws, legally, ethically, and yet having this undefined, on a certain sense, network. Okay, network is important. Network speaks to community. It speaks to in the fold. Okay, this black men throughout corporate America that are willing and open to talk transparently with a level of emotional literacy about their lived experiences and how they've overcome challenges, and saying, hey, there's somebody in the network that I'd like to put you in touch with, a colleague of mine, to have a conversation with that could be supportive to you, possibly around these topics. Would you be open to that conversation or connection? They say, yes, fantastic. I'll reach out to the other person. Hey, there's someone in the network. Same thing. Not, divulging they're a client or not. Just saying there's somebody in the network. And I have a network. And putting people in touch consensually. Say, hey, are you open to this conversation, meeting somebody? Put them in conversation. Let them take the conversation. So what they know and what the offer is there someone in the network. The network is broad-based. that it could be a supportive dialogue. And then connecting these two brothers together to have a dialogue and seeing what's coming out of it is a level of depth and conversation and connection that they're able to have. Or potentially, if they take it there, if they choose to take it there around very vulnerable topics that one may have already overcome, the lightning speed in which it can help and support this other man to move through that element of healing or mindset or even behavioral shifts is dramatically faster than what I could do with them in this one-on-one experience. And it connects them with a larger community. And in doing so, promotes a level of healing and empowerment that rapidly and dramatically impacts treatment outcomes. This is a very different approach than typical traditional mental health often goes down, but it ties into the cultural element that's already baked in with these clients. It's strength-based. It's a strength-based communal approach to psychological healing. So that's also a fine line that we walk over here at Black Executive Men, yet that we know to be valuable.
Very much so, because it's that sense of, and it's also not about the one up or one down aspect in that they are coming together as equals.
That's it.
And as you're telling me that, and because I'm also a geek and so forth, and going to get that geek element in for this, this last year, DC Comics did a series, I forget exactly the exact title of it, but they profiled certain characters of minority, telling their stories and their perspective of the entire DC universe. And the first one was with the character of Black Lightning. And there's a section in there where Black Lightning is talking to John Stewart, the Green Lantern, about the traumatic experiences that they have being these superheroes. Not being this essentially space cop, not being this hometown hero. These are two men talking about the struggles of what it means to be a Black superhero and deal with the moments of both their triumph, but also equally their failures.
Wow.
And as you're talking about this, I can't help but immediately think about that comic. And how that's also another of the continual messages in the diet. And I look at the media diet that we all live with. Because again, the messages too around what you're saying about being an executive. If we look at any narrative that gets put on the screen, it is the narrative that you're going to be there alone.
Wow. Interesting. I mean, not interesting, but I think kind of even further revealing of what at least we're, not at least, but what we are up to here at Black Executive Men. I thought about the name man, but that ain't it. It's the men, plural, multiple, community, brotherhood, social, connection, community.
Which is a very different place to approach this whole aspect of mental health.
It is, yeah. It's brilliant. It weaves, it weaves in all the elements that are present. Maybe not all. You know, there's always more. There's always more.
Oh, yeah.
But many of the elements that are present and creates an, I don't know if you say modality, but an offering that can really touch upon these multiple present elements of identity and culture, and business and gender, and have it forwarded as a specific offer and strain from within the larger psychotherapeutic community. So happy to be able to offer it, happy to be able to teach it to the larger space.
Yeah. And its own way, we hit on the whole myths and realities there as we talked about it. even if we didn't have to go into specifically as a title. So with that, it has been a pleasure. So where can people find you? Where can they find the Black Executive Program for the future?
Absolutely. So please go to blackexecutivemen.com, www.blackexecutivemen.com. It's spelled exactly how it sounds. You can tap into our resources there. For any investors that are out there as well, yeah, go ahead. Same website. Reach out. Would love to speak with you about opportunities to invest. And this is not a donation. We're a strong business and have an opportunity for you to make some good money while doing some good work at the same time. So blackexecutivemen.com, would love to hear from you.
Yeah, because fundamentally, we still need to keep the lights on to do this work.
That's right.
Yeah, it would be great if we could always do this for free, as we may have done centuries ago. But we got to live, sadly, in this capitalist society, and we still got to keep the lights on, because we can't be there to help you if we don't have the lights on.
Facts.
All right, Joel. So thank you again. I'm Perry Clark, I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. This has been Untying Knots, Minds and Souls Untethered on the Voice of America, or Voice America Network. So stay tuned, and we're going to have some more stuff for you later this year. So keep listening. Bye.
Thank you for tuning in for Untying Knots, Minds and Souls Untethered. Be sure to join your host, Perry Clark, for another episode on the podcast coming soon on the Voice America Empowerment Channel.